Today we are going to master something artists struggle with for years, in less than 10 minutes. Watercolor edges. I am showing you how to create perfect watercolor edges each and every time, and of course, how to correct your edges if you mess them up. Let's get started. There's a reason why watercolors are so popular. You look at a watercolor painting and it's like it's alive, flowing through the page, and that's because of how artists control their edges. Unfortunately, this turns out to be something people struggle with years and years. Because as we develop our watercolor skills, this becomes natural, but when we're first starting out, it does require a bit of practice. Let's start with the most common type of edge, the one that happens when you put wet paint onto dry paper, the hard edge. We use it to attract attention to a focal area, or when the painting requires more detail or texture instead of that blurry watercolor effect we all love so much. Apart from not having your brush wet enough, doing hard edges is pretty straightforward. But even with that dry brush, it's a look, a rough edge, if you will, that adds so much texture. Just look at that. The good thing about watercolors is you can pretty much do anything and still make it look cool. Or at least I like to think so. Our next type of edge are semi-soft edges, let's put it that way. It's when you have an edge that's slightly diffused, meaning it's not really, this big soft area, rather just the outer edge that kind of blends seamlessly into the background. In order to do this, the wetness of your brush is key. Less is more here, okay? If your brush is too wet, then you get hard edges. If your brush is too dry, then you're just lifting paint. So make sure your brush is damp without being too wet and just go from there, even if it means doing it a few times until you get it right. And there you have it. Now, we often need our edges even softer than that, and that's what I call a lost edge. No subtlety about it, complete blurriness really. I do this two ways, and both have to do with using a lot of water. So the first is pretty much like a semi-soft edge, except we use a wet brush instead of a damp one, and we only stop when we're happy with what we're doing. Because if we stop before that and your paper goes from wet to damp, it is game over. You get a hard edge and there's really nothing you can do about it. So we keep going, keep spreading that paint, and this works better for larger surfaces, of course. Now, another way to get a truly soft edge, like when you want all your edges to be soft, is to do wet on wet. As in, you wet the paper first and then you add color, and all of it is softness. Now, this doesn't need to be just paint on water. You can do this paint on wet paint. It's an awesome effect, one of my favorites really. I use it to create shadows sometimes, or to create some really cool color accents, like from when I'm making petals. Two things to keep in mind though. Make sure the base paint is wet, not damp. And make sure there's more pigment in the second layer than the base layer, or you will have lots and lots of blooms. So essentially you need more water on the base paint than the second layer, or else. Look at that, it is cute though. Now, let's say you want absolute chaos in your painting. A huge blur of pretty paint, giving it that kind of mirage kind of look. You know what I mean? You use a spray bottle. So let's do that. Also, depending on your spray range, this may not be a very good idea for small objects. And we can do this two ways. We either spray first and add paint later. This is a more controlled kind of look, as you can see. Or we can paint and then spray the whole thing and watch it go crazy. Which is obviously my favorite way of doing things. Look at that. Now, I promise to show you all kinds of edges, and sometimes you need to mix it up a little bit. For example, when we need attention to be drawn to one end of a mark, we can soften a section of our edge by using that damp brush like so. But we can also do a variegated look to break and soften the hard edge that's attracting too much attention. So we just soften intermittent spots on our edge, and the more we vary the size and spacing, the better it will look, and the more it will blend into the overall painting. And as you can see, there's really not much to it, not if you break the information into small pieces like we're doing here. This does not have to be overwhelming, and if you get to practice it as we go along, even better. Now, I also mentioned I will show you how to fix unwanted hard edges, so let's do that. Unwanted hard edges can happen for two reasons really. Uneven water content, as in there's water puddles or the paper buckled and created a dent where the water was held, or you just used too much water on your brush as we discussed earlier. And the second is the paper drying on you. And I would say that for everything I've shown you today, paper has no influence whatsoever except for this part. Cellulose paper does not absorb the water as well as cotton paper. So not only does it puddle easier, it also dries much quicker. I guess I should also add that you can get very hard edges if you add wet paint to a dry layer without blending it properly. So for the first reason, the answer is pretty simple. Don't leave any puddles on your paintings. Either dry your brush before painting or remove water from your puddle with a dry brush. You could use a paper towel, but that often leaves a mark, so a dry brush works better. And as for the paper drying, there is quite a bit of things to consider. Painting faster is, of course, always an option. Just do what you need before the paint gets damp and you're good to go, right? You can spread those edges, you can add other colors, do whatever you want. However, the truth is we all live in different places with different temperatures and whatnot, and that makes a huge difference in how long your paper takes to dry. So my suggestion is to test it out. Take a piece of the paper you usually use and draw a shape or a line or whatever you want. Then go immediately back and try to soften an edge. Then wait a bit of time and do it again to see if there's a difference. Then wait some more and do it again, and keep doing this until you start seeing that hard edge being formed, and that way you will know how much time you have to finish before this happens. Now, another question we need to answer is, can we fix a dry hard edge? Well, we can sure try. We need a small brush and we need clear water. We need our brush damp and we need to reactivate the paint and do a little lifting. If your paper is not very good, this is a big risk though. And if your paint stains a lot, it may not be possible. But anyway, we just keep doing this and drying our brush if necessary until we're happy with the result. We're smudging the line really, trying to make it a little less harsh. And here we go. And that's it. All I know about watercolor edge control. Did I miss something? Is there something I should add? If so, leave me a comment. I will see you soon. Bye bye.